His rocking slowed. He looked at Rex, then at the blank sketchbook in his lap. As Brian began to draw, his hand moving with a precision that bordered on the supernatural, Charlie felt a presence beside him. Sarah Truong. The detail is incredible, Sarah whispered, her eyes meeting Charlie's. There was a soft concern in her gaze, not just for the case, but for him. She knew how much Charlie took these cases to heart. He's drawing a face, Charlie, a face he wasn't supposed to see. While Brian drew, the investigation into Megan's life revealed a fractured romance. Jamie, her ex-partner, was the prime suspect. Money was missing from the firm. Revenge and greed seemed like the obvious motives. But as Charlie looked at the drawing, Brian produced a cold, calculated face that didn't belong to Jamie. He realized the truth was buried deeper. "It's not Jamie," Charlie said, showing the sketch to Sarah later that evening in the lab. "If it's not him, then Jamie's a scapegoat," Sarah replied. She moved closer. The scent of her perfume, something subtle, like jasmine cutting through the sterile smell of the morgue. Whoever did this wanted us to look at the ex-boyfriend while they made off with the ransom. The tension between them was palpable, a low hum of electricity that had been growing for months. In the high-stakes world of kidnapping and murder, they were each other's anchors. "I won't let her die, Sarah," Charlie vowed. "I know you won't," she said, her hand briefly touching his arm. "Because you have Rex, and you have me." Chapter 2. The Yacht of Broken Dreams. The recovery of Megan Schaefer had been a victory, but the peace in Street Johns was short-lived. The next call took them from the gritty streets to the sparkling marina. Jacob Kaufman was a man who had everything: money, power, and a beautiful wife, until a spear gun bolt ended his life on his own luxury yacht, the best kind. Charlie stood on the deck, the wind whipping his jacket. The scene was gruesome. Kaufman had been pinned like a bug in a collection, as one deckhand put it. "Rich men make rich enemies," Sarah remarked, joining him by the railing. She looked out at the water, her expression thoughtful. "But this feels personal. A spear gun isn't a weapon of convenience. It's a choice." The investigation turned into a web of high-tech scams and low-life desperation. Kaufman's business partner, Veronica Goodwin, spoke of AI revolutions and millions of dollars. But Rex's nose found something else: the scent of seawater on a weapon that should have been dry. The suspect list grew: the disgruntled deckhand Blaine, the AI genius James Endicott, who was actually running a glorified call center in India, and the grieving widow, Andrea. Between the interviews, Charlie found himself watching Sarah. She was brilliant, navigating the forensic data with an ease that fascinated him. During a break, they sat on the docks, sharing a coffee. "Do you ever think about it?" Charlie asked suddenly. "Just leaving it all? Buying a boat and sailing away?" Sarah smiled, a genuine, warm look that reached her eyes. "And do what, Charlie?" "You'd miss the chase within a week, and Rex would get seasick." Rex, hearing his name, let out a soft groan from where he lay in the sun. "Maybe you're right," Charlie laughed. "But it wouldn't be about the boat. It would be about the company." The words hung in the air, heavier than the salt spray. Sarah didn't look away. "The company is already pretty good, Detective." The moment was interrupted by Jesse's voice over the radio, but the shift in their dynamic was permanent. They weren't just partners anymore. They were two people circling a truth they weren't quite ready to voice. The Kaufman case concluded in a hail of gunfire and a desperate dive into the harbor. Veronica, the tech expert, had been the architect of the murder. Driven by a greed that outweighed her brilliance, she had tried to frame the widow and the deckhand, but she hadn't accounted for a dog that could smell a crypto key hidden inside a wristwatch. Chapter 3. The Distillery's Curse. Blood and Gin. It was a volatile mix. The Devereux Distillery was a landmark in Street Johns, but the patriarch, William Devereux, was found drowned in a vat of his own creation. The surprise tasting had turned into a funeral. Charlie walked through the distillery, the scent of juniper overwhelming. It was a family business, which usually meant family secrets. The three children, Alan, Jaden, and Melanie, were a study in repressed resentment. He was changing his will. Jesse informed them, tapping away at his tablet. Willem knew he was dying, congestive heart failure. He was going to announce a new direction for the company. Rex was fascinated by the botanical room. He paced between the bags of dried herbs until he sat firmly in front of a crate of Labrador tea. "What is it, pal?" Charlie asked. "Labrador tea," Sarah noted, coming up behind him. "It's a local botanical. It can be medicinal, but in high doses, it's toxic." It was the secret ingredient in Willem's new gin. The mystery deepened when a famous spirits critic, Simon Sawyer, was poisoned. The suspects were the children, each with a motive to either keep the company or burn it down for the insurance. Through the chaos of the Devereaux investigation, Charlie and Sarah found themselves working late nights in the office. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of tracking down poison bottles, Sarah found Charlie staring at a photo of his father. "He loved the job too," Charlie said softly. Sarah sat on the edge of his desk. "Is that why you do it? To honor him?" "Partly. But I also do it because I don't know who I am without it." "Is that a bad thing?" Sarah reached out, her fingers brushing the back of his hand. "It's only a bad thing if you don't allow yourself to be happy outside of the badge, Charlie. You're allowed to have a life. You're allowed to love someone." Charlie looked up at her, the office lights reflecting in his eyes. Sarah's breath hitched. "Then I'd say, you should probably tell her. Before the next murder call comes in." The moment was broken by a loud bark from Rex, who was standing by the door with his leash in his mouth. "Saved by the dog," Sarah teased, though her eyes remained soft. They eventually discovered that the rebel daughter, Melanie, had been the one to push her father into the vat. She had stolen her brother's idea, poisoned the critic, and tried to frame her siblings. It was a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions, fueled by the desire for a father's approval that would never come. Chapter 4: Survival in the Wild. The final straw came when the Craners, the city's most notorious crime family, decided to settle a score. What started as a blackmail plot by a low-level crook named Malcolm Carter ended in a bloody execution on the wharf. The shooter was Tyler Craner, a man with his father's malice but none of his restraint. "We have a witness," Charlie told Superintendent Donovan, Wyatt Donner. He saw the whole thing, but Wyatt had fled into the woods of Cape Royal, terrified for his life. And he wasn't alone. Serena Rickett, a professional hitwoman hired by the Craners, was hunting him. Charlie, Sarah, Jesse, and Rex headed into the wilderness. It was a race against time, and a predator who knew no mercy. The hike was brutal. The terrain was steep, the air thinning as they climbed the bluffs. At one point, Charlie slipped on a mossy outcrop, nearly falling into a ravine. It was Sarah who caught his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "I've got you," she hissed, pulling him back to safety. They locked eyes for a second, the fear of the foe replaced by something much more intense. In the middle of a manhunt, with a killer lurking in the trees, the truth finally surfaced. "If we get out of this," Charlie whispered, "I'm taking you to dinner. A real dinner. No files, no forensic talk." "I'll hold you to that, Hudson," she replied. The climax was a blur of adrenaline and terror. They found Wyatt, but Serena was right behind them. Shots rang out through the trees. Charlie took a bullet to the shoulder, the force of it knocking him back. "Charlie!" Sarah screamed, but Rex was already moving. He was a blur of black and tan, a force of nature. He didn't just attack, he neutralized. He led Serena on a false trail, using the very tactics Charlie had taught him, until she was cornered on a cliff edge, staring down the barrel of Donovan's reinforcement team. Epilogue. The Promise. 2 weeks later, the sun was actually shining over Street Johns. Charlie sat on his porch, his arm in a sling. Rex lay at his feet, gnawing on a new toy that Sarah had bought him. The Craners were behind bars, the law firm was rebuilding, and the city was, for the moment, quiet. The gate clicked open. Sarah walked up the path, carrying a bag of takeout and a bottle of wine. "No potato salad?" Charlie joked, referring to Donovan's famous dish. "I thought we'd try something a little more romantic," Sarah said, sitting down beside him. She poured 2 glasses of wine and looked out at the harbor. "You kept your promise, Charlie. We got out." "I intend to keep all my promises," he said. He reached out